Merkley.
So here on the committee, when we put into law the strategy, we specify several things that are specific activities locked into law, but many, many others are in report language. And the report language is designed to give the administration flexibility. And that creates kind of a dialogue about the administration saying, well, we'd like to not do that and do a little more over here and so on and so forth. But it also means that there's a desire for Congress to have the thinking behind the report language honored and discussed. So a spending plan is due to us, and you all provided one. And a normal spending plan, and I'm just going to show the one for the Geological Service. This is 6 pages. And if you want to know what we're going to spend on harmful algae blooms, it's in here. If you want to know what we're going to do for Shake Alert, which is a tsunami warning system, very, very important to us on the West Coast, and so forth, it's all here. So the spending plan is very, very detailed, giving us information both on the things we put into law, but also on the plan as related to the things we put into report language. When we received your spending plan, and I'm just use Geological Service as an example, it has 3 lines. It has a total amount, which would be found in a normal 6-page spending plan, and 2 sub-accounts that constitute 12% of the spending for the department, which means 88% of this spending plan, we have no idea what you're going to do. Now, let me take Shake Alert as that example in Oregon. The effort has been extensive. We have earthquakes every year. Someday we'll have a massive one. We had a harbor virtually destroyed in southern Oregon, near the boundary of Oregon and California, from an earthquake that happened in Japan because of the formation of the underwater mountains that channeled that energy right towards that spot across the entire Pacific Ocean. So you can imagine if there's a nearby earthquake or a really big one, we're in big trouble. So our work is kind of at a loss. And all these folks out there and all these individual programs that are in these 6 pages, they don't know if they're getting funding or not. And yet we're nearing the end of the fiscal year. So how do we get from what the 2 sub-accounts that you sent us were ones we had locked into law. So technically you've met the letter of the law. But certainly not the spirit of having this dialogue over these various programs. And yet we're trying to prepare our strategy for next year. We always kind of realized if there wasn't a good faith effort to honor the reporting language, we could put every one of these sublines locked into law, but that takes away the flexibility. So it's been a mutually beneficial arrangement. When can we get a spending plan that isn't just the 2 sub-accounts that constitute only 12% and that was just the USGS as an example. I mean, massive amount of every other part of Interior, it's the same story. So if the entire, massive spending plan with details versus just, this is the entire department spending plan right here. How do we address this? And what is the holdup for getting a vision for all these individual pieces that were laid out in what we put into the report language?
Well, if you talk about the vision, I mean, the one thing coming in, I mean, having spent all those decades in tech and specifically around financial and accounting systems, this federal budgeting process and the tools, I mean, it would be very easy for us to give you that 6-page sheet and just, take what's in there, increase the number a little bit, hand it to you, everybody's familiar with it, and go. But it is the systems themselves and the information and how they flow, needs an entire overhaul. And I know we can't get it done now, but certainly we're taking a look at that as we bring in a new team, a new IT team, and trying to say, because we want to have the collaborative process, we want to work with you, we want to do that, but we also want to figure out a way to make sure that we're spending dollars and getting good returns. It's not how much we spend, it's also the results that we get.
So here's the challenge. The spending plan is about FY25, which started last October 1st. So I take the point about as you produce a strategy for detailed budget for FY26 for us to have a starting point for discussion. But for FY25, all of these individual programs are going, we can't be efficient. We're suspending our design work, we're suspending our contractors, it's all going up in price, all because we don't know if our funds are going to be obliterated because they're in the report language, so you could move them from place to place. And so it's massively inefficient. And what I've heard is the theme of your desire is to be efficient. But you've got all of these sub-programs all operating inefficiently right now because you've got people standing around going, we don't know what we're doing because we don't have the money and we don't know if we're ever going to get it. How is that a good strategy?
Well, it's a necessary effort that we're going through right now because you mentioned contractors. The explosion in the number of contractors working for Interior go way beyond the 65,000 of estimated headcount. And in some cases, it appears that we may have team members whose job is to manage contractors. And so then it leads us back to, is that work that we should be doing ourselves versus outsourcing to others? And why the huge increase in contractors in the last couple of years? Did we suddenly find it that we're unable to do this work ourselves? So there's a lot of questions that I think would be reasonable to ask, because what those answers that we'll get from looking at 25 help inform what we should put in the budget for 26. What's working, what's not, what's efficient, what are we doing internally versus outsourcing. So anyway, and with a small staff, we're asking a lot of I think
So I would take your point looking forward. When I ran nonprofits, I tried to do things in-house, not use subcontractors at all, because I could do it much more efficiently, get much more work done. I had complete control. But this is about work that's underway right now being interrupted with no idea what's happening. We have no idea how many canceled contracts. So that work, it's very inefficient. I mean, looking forward to what you want to fund next year, I take your point about this analysis, but for this FY25, what contracts are there with all of these to execute the construction work on new Shake Alert or the new algae research, or what biologists are standing by waiting to know if they're going to complete that work? And to me, it's horrifically inefficient to interrupt all of that work, nobody knowing what's happening. They don't know, and I understand that technically it is a pause, but is a pause leading to an obliteration of that program, even for the things that were in there for FY25 or so forth. Anyway, I want to make that point that looking to the future, huge control by the executive. Looking to FY25, I'm sure there are individual items you're like, well, we want to adjust what we did in FY25. That's why we put them into report language rather than locking them into law. But this is the worst outcome, where we have no idea, and all these programs have no idea if they're getting the money. So I have heard that OMB has locked this up, preventing you from being able to actually give us a spending plan. Is that correct?
We're waiting for some of the apportionments from OMB, yes.
Can you connect with Mr. Vogt and tell him this is horrifically inefficient for FY25 and you need to be able to let these programs operate or not operate, be canceled or get their funding and not be standing around waiting or losing expertise?
Well, we're in regular communication with OMB, and again, I think perhaps when both of you are out of the room, is saying there's at the administration level. I mean, last year we spent $2,000 billion as a government more than we brought in. I mean, that's what $2 trillion is. And so, well, these numbers may seem small. I mean, each of us as a department has been asked to do something to help rein in spending to get that number. We've got an interest now passes $1 trillion. We can get that number down. We can fund everything we've talked about here today.
I will say that your spending plan has the same amount, for example, for the Geological Service as we put in, so you're not saving a damn dime. What you are doing is interrupting every sub-account and every team that's working on these different projects. So again, looking forward, I take your point. Looking at FY25, I do not.
Well, respectfully, they're connected, because understanding, for me to decide whether they should be in the budget for 26, I need to know what they're actually doing in 25 and whether we're doing it ourselves or doing it with a contractor. So while you're saying they're not connected, I think they're completely connected in terms of us having information about what would we fund going forward based on what we learn about this year's.
Well, it's hard to learn much about this year if you don't ever get a spending plan implemented and the year is over or half gone. It ends on on September 30th. For example,
But
land
some,
water
you understand that
conservation
this is not intentional. I mean, this is like we came in on, in the middle of the fiscal year. I mean, this is a transition year. This must happen in the government every 4 years.
Actually, we get a much more detailed spending plan from other administrations in transition. This is a rare exception. I'll just give,
Well, this is
and
the first administration that's actually trying to reduce spending instead of increase it. So maybe that's the difference.
Well, you're not the first administration that's looked for efficiencies, but my point is you're creating vast inefficiencies while you're bragging about doing efficiencies. And therefore, you really need to be honest with the American public about the damage you're doing to the institutional knowledge and the fact that people are standing around waiting for their funding, not knowing that projects interrupted and they're going up in cost. All of these are not factors you should be bragging about to the American people because they're inefficiencies. They're wasting our American money. Look to FY26, see your changes that you want, but don't come here and tell us that by interrupting programs and running up costs that you're doing something efficient.
I think.
Well, I just want to be clear, I'm not bragging about anything. There's no bragging going on. I mean, we all share this. We're all Americans and we're all facing the same overspending problem.
I just heard you say that you're the only folks in the history of the country that have looked to create lower costs, and that it's just not true.
Well,
and you are bragging about that, but you're disrupting programs and making them less efficient. I'm going to turn this back to the chair.
Yeah, I think the point that needs to be made here is when we are dealing with a full year CR,